God's got a real awesome message for us today. And I believe it can be life-changing, and that you're going to hear something that just moves you and lets you know that God still has that destiny for you. And He has planned a purpose for your life. It's going to be great. But as I introduce our pastor today, our lead pastor, Tony Moore, I'd like for him to also bring his wife with him as they come up. Give him a hand. They are celebrating 34 years of marriage.
Whoa!
It really has been 34 years.
It's like that 70s show.
That is the honeymoon picture. But
It's not the only one.
it's not the only one. Well, that's the only one we put on screen. What's wrong with y'all? Makes me want to share a story I heard, but I won't. But I just want you guys to celebrate with us as 34 years of marriage. That's a tremendous example for all of us to strive for. You definitely have a good woman, and you definitely have a great leader in the home and in your life. And we just celebrate 34 years for you guys, and got a small gift for you. Hope you guys can take that, and it's from the Transformation House and all the Transformers. We love you, and 34 years.
In 34 years, you might look like that. Those glasses might be back in style. Sorry, I just happened to think when I picked this up, it's been sitting here for a minute, and I got a note on Facebook from a friend that said that he had made a cup of coffee and it was so good, and he got down to the last swallow from the bottom of the cup and there was something hard in it. He thought, maybe crumbs, backwash. It was an earwig. Well, see, he told me that right after I had seen about 1 million of them the day before, so it was, maybe I won't drink this. I'm sure there's nothing in it, but whew, it is a, sorry to ruin your coffee. Oh, I am really excited to continue this series, Find Your Way Home. Wow. I don't know what you've gotten out of the last couple of weeks. I hope it's been inspiring and it's been something that you can use in your life, something that the Lord uses to really give you direction and help you give direction to somebody else. Because I will remind you that while we're finding our way home, there's somebody that's following us. While we're finding our path, while we're finding our destiny, and we're going whatever direction God's sending us, that there's somebody watching. There's somebody that needs what you have. Somebody that needs to learn from your experience. Somebody's going to learn from your bad experiences so they don't have to have it. Did you watch somebody else and see how they messed up and said, I'm not going to do that? And so you knew to take a different path than they took? Or did you keep going that way? Anyway.
Kept going that way.
Kept going anyway. I'm never going to be like my dad. And then every time I look in the mirror, there he is. Whatever it is that you said, we really can leave a path for other people to follow, to make it easier, especially for us here at Transformation House. What we're really all about is blazing a trail for other people in the city to really find their destiny in Christ, for them to find the thing that God has for them to do. So as we're following Him, we're praying that somebody is following us. We're going to continue through the book of Ruth. Today we're in chapter 3. First 2 Sundays that we've talked about Ruth in chapters 1 and 2. The first week was Chris led us in determination born of adversity. Does anybody remember that? Determination. I'm going to do it. I am going to do what I feel in my heart to do in spite of whatever hard things come my way. I'm going to keep persevering. And sometimes it's just not that hard. I mean, after you get to a certain place and you have a certain amount of determination and you've crossed enough hills and you've fought enough battles, you come to the point in life when, oh, that's just one more. That's nothing. You better try something harder than that, because that's not going to stop me. You just have that much determination that you're going to get through some of the things much easier than when you first started. So I want to encourage you. It gets easier. It does get easier. Doesn't mean necessarily there are fewer battles, but sometimes when you have that determination, it just makes it so much easier to keep going. Then last week, I really enjoyed last week. I liked teaching with Chris, and last week when we talked about grace when least expected, how good God is to us, and how many times when we were just minding our own business and out of the blue, He just drops this blessing in our life. Like 36 years ago, I was just minding my own business. Just left home. I'm going to tell you the truth, I couldn't wait to get out of that house. For those of you who are graduating from high school this year and going off to college, I don't know how you feel about that. Some of you might, take your security blanket with you, or drive out and back from home every night so you can stay in your own room. Or that wasn't me. I was ready to get out of that house. There wasn't a thing wrong with the house. I was just ready to get out of it. Wasn't anything wrong with my parents or my family. I was just ready to get away from them.
Amen.
Right? Some of you can relate, I know. So I went to, I had a choice. Which college do you want to go to? I knew I was going into ministry. I was going to go to a Bible college, so I picked the one that was farthest away from home. Well, not farthest, but the one that I wanted to go to that was farthest away from home. Because I thought, I could go to Florida, and, that would be cool. But they could get there over the weekend. So I went to Missouri, and that was like, had to be like an all-day or 2-day trip. So anyway, I got there, I got to college and was just doing my thing and had no clue. And I have to tell you the story of how Judy and I met today. Since it's our anniversary, I don't want to bore you with this, but I'm going to tell you anyway. So look like you enjoyed the story. I met a friend. I wasn't trying to meet friends, seriously, but I was a loner. I stayed by myself most of the time. So when I got to school the first week or so, I spent most of my time either in my dorm room or in a piano studio playing the piano. And I was in the studio one time just playing, and this guy came and knocked on the door, and he said, let's go eat dinner together. Well, he lived on my hall, so I had seen him around, so I thought, okay, let's do that. So we went to dinner, and I didn't know him from Adam. He lived in Indiana, and so we're standing there, right inside the cafeteria. No, we went into the line, we sat at the table, and we're sitting at this table eating our dinner, and he said, see that girl over there in the pink sweater? And I said, yeah. And there were 4 girls sitting at a table together, and there were the 2 of us sitting over here. He said, the girl in the pink sweater, I'm going to marry her. And the 2 girls sitting with her are her cousins and their sisters, and the other girl is one of the other sister's roommates. How in the world he already knew all this the first week of school, and they're all from Ohio and Michigan, so apparently he's already decided. He's never talked to this girl in the pink sweater, but he's going to marry her. So, well, good luck with that. Well, then it became a thing where we became really close friends, and every time we would go to the cafeteria, we would stand by the door and watch for these 4 girls to come across the campus toward the cafeteria so he could get at the back of the line, so they would be in line behind him, so he would have a chance to talk to the girl in the pink sweater. And she didn't want to have a thing to do with him. I mean, she didn't want to talk to him. She was not happy, and sometimes they would just, all 4 of them, go over to the other line when they saw that we were standing in the back of this line. So, well, okay, long story short, this is what happened. That was in 1977, our freshman year at school. We were all freshmen. The girl in the pink sweater, the next August, married the guy. They started dating and married the next August. They're still married. The girl is Judy's cousin. The 2 sisters that were with her were Judy and her sister. Well, in the meantime of them dating, then we had to go together. It became a group thing, so we were all together. And that's how Judy and I met. We started just hanging out together and became friends. So then the next summer, Judy and I got married after our sophomore year in college, and then finished college the next 2 years as a married man. The last year of college, I'll say that we had a child. I won't say who the child was, but 32 years ago we had a child, and so whoever number 1 was.
It's number 1. I'm number 2.
Anyway, so that's how we met. We met in college, and we just started out as friends, hanging out together and doing everything together because this guy really wanted to marry this girl. And then we fell in love and started going together, and Judy can't share any stories about any of that. But I asked her Saturday night, I said, do you remember what was going on 34 years ago tonight? This was last night when we were out eating. I said, do you remember what was going on 34 years ago? Your mom was throwing mashed potatoes on my mom. Her mom was fixing dinner for us, and we showed up at their house. My parents went to Ohio, from here to Ohio for the wedding, and they showed up at Judy's house, and her mom was so nervous to meet my parents. Worse than I was to meet her dad. And she had a mixer, and she was mixing the mashed potatoes with the mixer. And when my mom and dad walked in the door, she got so excited, she said, "Hey!" And potatoes went everywhere.
Oh my gosh.
It was the beginning of a lot of stories that I won't tell you all about. But it was also, for Judy and me, it was the start of us finding our way home. Exactly what we're talking about, finding our destiny together and finding what God had for us. And we had no clue. So, those of you who are starting out, whatever your dreams are, whatever you think it's going to be like or the road's going to be like, I promise you it's not going to be exactly like that. It's going to be a little different from that. But if you trust God, I'm going to tell you that the reason Judy and I are together after 34 years, number 1 is the grace of God, because we put Him first in our lives and in our home. And second of all, because I married the best person in the world for me. Nobody else. So, on to Ruth. I really do think, I want to ask you a question. How many of you have had some big life change, like a wedding or graduation or moving to a new house or all of the above in the past year? Anybody had like big major life stuff, like new babies, all kind? Just put your hand up a minute, or it's coming in the next month. Okay, all of you that are graduating, you're included too. And is it any wonder with all that change in our lives that we're so stressed? Those are stress factors in a person's life. All the change really causes And stress isn't a bad thing. Stress actually is a good thing. It stretches us and it helps us grow. The problem is when stress becomes distress, then that's where the issues come in. So, but managing those things, the changes in our life, the way that life takes us in different turns, is really a good thing. I'm thankful that the result of my 4 years in college in Missouri wasn't just to get a piece of paper to hang on the wall. Because that piece of paper left the wall a long time ago and just doesn't really mean anything. I can put it on paper that I have it. It doesn't mean a thing to anybody that reads it at this point. Now, it did in the beginning, but I'm saying that now, 30-some years later, that doesn't mean anything because my life has changed so much that I don't rely on that. I don't depend on that particular degree for anything that I do. Helps me play the keyboard on Sunday morning. Anyway, Ruth was in this place where everything in her life had changed. And we've talked about this. She became a widow, her husband died, her father-in-law died, her brother-in-law died. It's just Ruth and her mother-in-law Naomi who have left Ruth's homeland, and now they're going back to Naomi's hometown, which is only about 50 miles away. But in those days, it was like, 50 miles was, a week trip. Because the Dead Sea was between where Ruth lived and in Bethlehem, where Naomi was from. So they would have to go all the way around the Dead Sea. And it was a big change for Ruth to leave her hometown and to trust her mother-in-law to go back to her hometown. But as we saw last week, that God was blessing her. She got so much more than she asked for, just in provision for her. When there was, now get this, there are two widows who have traveled back to a place where they have nobody to take care of them, nobody to provide for them. It's just the two of them now. So we pick up in chapter 3, and it says that Naomi said to Ruth one day, "My daughter, should I not try to find a home for you where you will be well provided for? Is not Boaz, with whose servant girls you've been, a kinsman of ours? Tonight he will be winnowing barley in the threshing floor, so wash and perfume yourself and put on your best clothes. Then go down to the threshing floor, but don't let him know that you're there until he's finished eating and drinking. When he lies down, note the place where he's lying, then go and uncover his feet and lie down, and he will tell you what to do." "I will do whatever you say," Ruth answered. So she went down to the threshing floor and did everything her mother-in-law told her to do. When Boaz had finished eating and drinking and was good spirits, he went over to lie down at the far end of the grain pile, and Ruth approached quietly, uncovered his feet, and lay down. In the middle of the night, something startled the man, and he turned and discovered a woman lying at his feet. "Who are you?" he asked. "I'm your servant, Ruth," she said. "Spread the corner of your garment over me, since you're a kinsman redeemer." "The Lord bless you, my daughter," he replied. "This kindness is greater than that which you showed earlier. You've not run after the younger men, whether rich or poor. And now, my daughter, don't be afraid. I will do for you all you ask. All my fellow townsmen know that you're a woman of noble character. Although it is true that I'm near of kin, there's a kinsman redeemer nearer than I. So stay here for the night, and in the morning, if he wants to redeem, good, let him redeem. But if he's not willing, as surely as the Lord lives, I will do it. Lie here until morning." So she lay at his feet until morning, but got up before anyone could recognize her. And he said, "Don't let it be known that a woman came to the threshing floor." He also said, "Bring me the shawl that you're wearing and hold it out." And when she did so, he poured into it 6 measures of barley and put it on her. Then he went back to town. When Ruth came to her mother-in-law, Naomi asked, "How did it go, my daughter?" Then she told her everything Boaz had done for her and added, "He gave me these 6 measures of barley, saying, 'Don't go back to your mother-in-law empty-handed.'" Then Naomi said, "Wait, my daughter, until you find out what happens, for the man will not rest until the matter is settled today." Now, today we're going to talk about the payoff of preparation in our journey to find our destiny, to fulfill what God has for us. There's a lot we can do. And I think for those of us who find ourselves in some kind of life change, like moving or marrying or graduating or whatever it is, this is really a good word for us today. Because it is important, even from the beginning, to have a goal. Even if it changes at some point, it's good to have a goal and to be headed toward that goal. And you see, somebody tell me this. What did Ruth need? What was the thing that Ruth needed? Any guesses? You're going to be wrong, but go ahead.
Someone to take care of her.
Okay, someone to take care of her.
Somebody said it.
Who else has a wrong answer? No, it's not wrong. It's not wrong.
Food?
What?
Food?
Food? Someone to take care of her. Food. There you go. Ruth needed a home. Verse 1, Naomi said, "Isn't it time for me to do what I can to prepare a home for you, to fix it to where you have your own place?" Because Naomi and Ruth, here they are in this country where Ruth is a stranger, and her mother-in-law says, "You need your own place. Move out." No, she wasn't. Not quite like that. But how? I mean, think about this. Ruth, who is in a foreign country, and she has no relatives. She knows no one except Naomi. How is it possible for her, as a widow, to make a home for herself? It's really not easy. Which is the reason that in chapter 2, last week, we saw how much Boaz was providing for her. She went to his field hoping, she said when she left home, "I hope I just find somebody that will let me follow them and pick up the scraps that they leave behind." Because she needed to take that back home to make her food. But not just food. She was actually getting the seed so she could grow her own food. So she wouldn't have to depend on other people. She's actually trying to make a home here with Naomi. So what she really needs is a home, but how can she possibly do that? Well, as we look through this chapter, there are some things I think that she did. There's a process that she went through that I think will help us as we're finding our destiny and we're following Jesus and we hear his voice and he calls us to something that looks like it's so impossible for us, just like finding a home was for Ruth. It just seems so, I mean, sometimes we hear this vision in us. And God plants a seed of vision in us and he says, "This is what I want for you. I don't want anything less than this." And it seems so foreign to us. It seems so much bigger than anything we could possibly accomplish. And yet, if God said do it, if God said he wants us to do it, then we can do it. He doesn't call us to anything that's completely impossible. He calls us to things that are impossible for us to do in ourselves. But he calls us to those things so we will rely on him. So we'll put our trust completely in him and say, "Okay, God, I'm going to do this, but you're going to have to do it. I want to get there, but I'm going to follow you. I'm going to listen to how you tell me to do it." So the first thing I think in verse 2, Naomi said, "Is not Boaz with whose servant girls you've been a kinsman of ours? Tonight he will be winnowing barley on the threshing floor." This is the first thing. And sometimes this is the hardest thing for us. So let's just start with the hard stuff. Let's get it out of the way. What Naomi did, and what I think would really help us a lot of times that we just refuse to do, we put up a brick wall and we say no to this thing. Ruth listened to the person that loved her most. She had a conversation with her, but it wasn't just talking, it was also listening. The person who loved her the most in Bethlehem was Naomi. Nobody else even knew her. But sometimes for us that is so hard. The people who are closest to us sometimes are the hardest people to receive from. Have you found that to be true, or is it just me? Is it just me? I mean, the people that really care about you. I'm talking about when you're ready to make a decision and you know, okay, I'm going this direction. I know that God's telling me to go this way. And somebody wants to give you advice. It's really important for us to listen to the wisdom that people who love us and are closest to us. It doesn't mean they're always right. Okay, so let's just get that out there. It doesn't mean that their way is always the right way or that you should always do what they say. What I'm saying is you should listen to their wisdom because they know you best and they love you most. So they know things about you that other people out here who are advising you don't know. So take into account the wisdom that the people who are closest to you have. I didn't say do everything they say. I said take into account the wisdom they offer you. Consider it when you're making your decision, which is really all Ruth had to do. I mean, we hear so many voices. We'll listen to people that don't even know us before we listen to the person that's close to us sometimes. But Ruth listened to Naomi and received her counsel. And then in verse 3, Naomi told her specifically what to do. She said, wash and perfume yourself, put on your best clothes, go down to the threshing floor, but don't let him know that you're there till he's finished eating and drinking. I mean, she came up with this plan. Naomi came up with this plan. So this is what I want us to hear from this verse. Because while Ruth didn't have the ability to create a home for herself, there were things she could do. And Naomi was giving her a little list of things she could do. Okay, I mean, for instance, I used to have a job where I hired and fired people. Man, I hate that. On both ends. Because, people come to you for a job and they're not qualified or you don't want them to work for you. It's just hard for me to say no to a person that needs work. It's hard for me to say no. And the firing part was just almost impossible. I hate that with a passion. I don't care who they were or how bad they were. It was just really hard. Some people have no problem at all. They can just be Donald Trump all day. You're fired. But that's just not me, not my personality. But here's the thing. When people come looking for a job, I don't know if anybody's looking for a job. I don't want to know if anybody's looking for a job. You just take this for what it is. If they came looking to me for a job and they didn't even bother to brush their teeth before they came, or, they looked like they just rolled out of bed and walked into the office, you wouldn't believe how good a worker I could be for you. Right. You wouldn't believe how fast I can show you the door. There are things when you're making decisions or when you're faced with choices, there are things you can do. You might not be able to make the person hire you, but you can make yourself at least presentable enough that they would want to. Does that make sense? Does that seem like common sense? No, apparently not in some cases. So anyway, there are things as we go through finding our way to our destiny that we can do. There are things we know are the right thing to do. We can live in integrity. We can make wise choices. We can stop doing stupid stuff that's going to take us down the wrong path. And we know every time, okay, I have a choice here. Am I going to do this or am I going to do this? Well, this is going to set me back a year or a week or whatever. This one's going to take me right to where I want to go. But I really like this so much better than this. This is so much more fun, or this one makes me feel better, or I'm just mad and I'm going to do what I want to do. So we just make these stupid decisions so many times when really we could project ourselves so much faster into the place that God has for us in our lives if we just do what we can do. Just do the right thing. And so Naomi gave Ruth these instructions. Do this. Wash and perfume yourself. That's why I brought up the shower and brushing your teeth, by the way. Nobody here. I just brought that up because Naomi told Ruth to do it. And then, well, I was thinking, sorry, I just all of a sudden think about a specific person. Maybe I shouldn't talk about a specific person. I just thought about a specific person that was looking for a job and seemed to have lots of qualifications and would have been really good. But the way that he presented himself, he had no confidence. And in himself or his abilities. I mean, it looked good on paper. So because he didn't seem to possess that characteristic in his personality, it made it hard to believe what was written on the paper. You know what I mean? It just didn't match. So I'm going to go with what I see, because instead of this. So, you know, here we are. You can look confident even if you're not. And I don't mean the whole fake it till you make it part, even though sometimes that's not a bad thing. I actually had a pastor tell me that one time when I was going to meet the board of the church. They were looking for a music minister, and I went to the church, and I said, well, I've never, you know, it was a much larger church than I had been in, and you know, they had all these things that they did that I had never participated in before, and I told him that, and he said, well, they won't know that. Do you think you can do it? I think I can do it. I've never done it, but I think you can. He said, well, then act like you can. So I did. It worked. It was my favorite place to be. You can, and I don't mean you can fake yourself into a position that God has for you. I mean that you can walk in a confidence that if He called you to that place, He's already given inside of you the potential to do it. You don't have to hold back because, well, I've never done that before, or I'm just not sure. Walk in confidence that God gives you, that He will carry you through till you do what He's called you to do. In verse 6, it says that Ruth replied to Naomi, says she went down to the threshing floor and she did everything her mother-in-law told her to do. In this case, Naomi's word was wise, and it was right for Ruth. So Ruth followed through. A big step a lot of people miss. Follow through. If you say you're going to do it, what's the rest of the sentence? Do it. Exactly. If you're committed to get to this place, then keep taking steps in that direction. Stop going the other way, but follow through with what you said you're going to do. Follow through on the advice that people give you that take you in that direction. Don't go in the other direction. Keep going and keep following through. Verse 12 and 13. Now here's the thing. When Ruth got down to the threshing floor, this is kind of her expectation. And let me kind of explain the story of what happened here, because it sounds really creepy. Wait till the man has finished eating and drinking, and when he's drunk, no, she didn't say drunk, but when he has finished and he's satisfied with his meal and he's worked all day, he's going to go sleep. When he goes to sleep, you go uncover his feet and then lay down right beside his feet. This is the creepiest Bible story I've ever heard. Okay, so let me explain to you, because it really is a cultural thing in this context. So listen, if you want a job, I'm not suggesting you go lay at the boss's feet and, yeah, right, Chris? So, but here's the deal. There were two things about uncovering his feet. Number one, when he woke in the night, it would get his attention, and he would know she was there. She's there for one purpose. The reason she's there is because she needs a home. And according to Naomi, this is the guy who will provide a home, because in their culture, when a husband died, the next of kin, the brother-in-laws, who would be the next of kin, were supposed to take care of the widows. They're supposed to bring them in and marry them and provide for them in this cultural setting. So what she's there to say is, I need a home, and you're the person to give it to me. So by uncovering his feet, first of all, she gets his attention, and second of all, she's saying, I'm available and need a place to stay. Not available in that way. Okay. I can read your mind. See, it's just, you're so transparent. So that's what uncovering the feet was about. And then when she got there and did it, the verse that we read says that when he woke up and saw her and said, who are you? And she said, I'm Ruth. And he realized, oh, this is Ruth. Then she said, spread the corner of your garment over me. That's another step in the creepy story. But really what it meant was, give me protection. Be my provider. You're the person that I'm looking to cover me. And so that's what the story is about. That's what happened in the night. So this is what she's going for. She's going expecting that if I go and ask him, because he's the next person in line to provide for me, then he's going to be my provider. I'm going to get a home. So when he wakes in the middle of the night and he realizes his feet are cold, and he looks down at his feet and there's a girl, and he's asked what she's there for, who is she and what she's there for, and she says, spread your garment over me. This is his response. In verses 12 and 13, he says this, although it's true that I am near of kin, there's a kinsman redeemer nearer than I. In other words, you have a closer relative than me. There's another man who you should be laying at his feet. There's another man that you don't know about, apparently, that you should be going to have this conversation with. So he says, just stay here. Tomorrow morning I'll go talk to him, and if he wants to be your redeemer, if he wants to marry you, and this is the word that they used, redeem, because they were actually buying her into their family so that they could provide for her, because she had nobody to provide for her. So they were redeeming or buying her back into the family. So he says, I'll have a conversation with him tomorrow. If he wants to, great. If he doesn't, I promise you, I will do it. So here's the thing for us. Sometimes we have our heart set on something, and we're sure, I know this is what God wants. And then we get to the point where it looks like it's going to happen, and there's an obstacle. There's something else in front of us. There's something else like a roadblock or a second opinion or somebody that has a negative comment. Or, you put like your hopes and dreams, you put them as your status on Facebook, and some smart aleck comes by and wants to, crash your dreams in one little sentence, and you take that one to heart instead of listening to what God said he was going to do. You listen to this one little comment from this person and it just takes you down. Sometimes, like in this story with Ruth and Boaz, sometimes we come up to this place where there's a turn in the road we didn't expect. There's a delay. There's something that we weren't expecting that happens. Here we are in the middle of, this is it. I know God is moving. I know he's going to speak. I know he's going to provide for me. This is the answer. Today's my day. And then somebody pulls the rug out from under us. It really helps if when you start your journey, you start off expecting that. Not in a negative way to where you're just always looking for, the bad things to happen. But be prepared that things are going to happen in a different timetable than your timetable. It's just not going to be on your schedule. So when it turns in a different direction, be okay with that. Okay, I'm willing to wait. Let's wait till tomorrow. In Ruth's circumstance, what difference did overnight make? It's not like he's going to have a home now. So overnight wasn't a big deal for her. Sometimes our overnight turns into an extended stay. And sometimes we just don't see how it possibly can work because we see the delay as so much bigger than the destiny. I just ask you this now. If you know where you're headed, if you believe there's something good in front of you that God has for you, but you find yourself right now in a place of delay, are you going to give up? Are you going to stop? Are you going to let this setback stop you completely? Are you just going to throw your hands up and say, I guess it's never going to happen? I want to show you a short video before we close this morning. This is a girl who was literally trying to make her way home. A different kind of home. You'll see it in the video. and she came up against a really unexpected delay in her journey to home.
In a small town in the middle of Washington State. On a field inside a chain-linked fence, in a game fewer than 100 people saw. A home run memorable not for the distance it traveled, or the game it decided, but for the meaning it carried. The last Saturday in April, the second game of a softball doubleheader between Central Washington and Western Oregon.
Well, we were both neck and neck fighting for the conference championship.
As a senior, this was Sarah Tucholsky's last chance to win a championship. She'd never hit a home run before, not in college, not in her life.
A 5'2", I'm not very tall. I'm more a line drive hitter. I don't hit for power.
But in the top of the second inning, with 2 runners on the second pitch, that changed.
I hit that pitch and it just went.
And we're just cheering, and the runners are cheering as they round the base to head home. And then I'm going, where's Sarah?
In her excitement, Tucholsky failed to touch first base, so she quickly turned back.
Her pivoting just didn't pivot with her. And I heard her kind of yell, and she just dropped to the ground, and I was like, oh no.
Just fell immediately and was in a lot of pain. Just, I tried to keep my legs straight, but I was in so much pain that I couldn't really keep still.
Tucholsky, with a torn ACL, crawled back to first base. She was a long way from reaching home plate and keeping her first and only home run.
When she got back to first base, she laid there and she hugged on to first base. And then at that time, I was staring at the base and I go, what on earth are we gonna do?
And I turned the umpire standing right next to me. I said, what is the ruling if I put somebody in for Sarah? He said, it'll be a 2-run single.
If anybody would have, on her team, would have helped Sarah, she would have been called out.
That was the problem. None of Tucholsky's teammates were allowed to touch her. That's when Central Washington's Mallory Holtman, a player with more home runs than any other in conference history, a player for the opposing team, spoke up.
I went to the home plate umpire and asked if we could pick her up and carry her, and he looked at me a little strange.
And the umpire went and said, yes, you can do that. I'm still standing there in shock. I said, thank you so much.
We asked her, is it okay if we pick you up and carry you around the bases? And I say yes, and and say thank you. And she says, you hit the ball over the fence, you deserve it.
For that reason only, because she deserved it, Holtman and Wallace began to carry the injured Tucholsky, stopping to touch her left foot on each base as the 3 made their way around the diamond.
We actually started laughing because we were just wondering what this would look like to all the people in the stands.
When I looked up, I didn't see, giant smiles and screams. I saw emotion and tears and people crying.
It's a great moment when someone has character to step up and do the right thing at the right time.
It's emotional. You're proud. Be associated with those kids.
That's the first home run of the season for number 8, Sarah Tucholsky.
The fact is, I made my goal. I hit a home run, and it's my last at-bat of my career, but I, made my goal, so I'm proud of myself.
Mallory Holtman, Liz Wallace, and the Central Washington team lost the game that day, 4-2. Sarah Tucholsky lost the rest of her season and her career to a knee injury. But for the spirit of sportsmanship, a greater victory, made on a long trot around the bases, a trip that truly touched them all.
I have a lot of respect for her and put her in high regards, her and her teammates. And, I can't thank her enough.
So, I want to tell you this morning that if you're headed home, God has prepared a way for you to get home. He's made a way for you to get to the very place that He's destined in your life. He's made a way for you to get there. And we have no clue from one day to the next what's going to hit us in the face. What kind of obstacle am I going to come up against that's going to send me to the ground? What is the enemy going to do to try to stop me? What are my enemies going to do to try to stop me? What things are going to come up in my life that just seem like I'm not going to get past this? I want to tell you something that the Word of God says. The Word says that for the person who makes the Lord his refuge, God will make even his enemies to be at peace with him. If your enemy is all you see, if the thing or the person who's standing opposing you is so big in your life that they get all your attention, it's going to be really hard to get home until you see that they're there for a purpose. Until you see that God has put people in your life to take you home. It's not anything you can do on your own. Just like Ruth, she couldn't do it. She had to have Naomi. She had to have Boaz. Somehow we've got to get a kinsman redeemer. We have to be redeemed. We have to be brought back from this place that we've fallen into the will of God, into His plan for our life. Somehow we've got to get here, but we cannot do it by ourselves. It's impossible for us to get home alone. So we made a way. And it was through Jesus, specifically through the work that Jesus did for us on the cross when He paid the price for us to have everlasting life and peace with God forever. But then, throughout our life, God has surrounded us with people that come to encourage us, that come to challenge us. And sometimes we see that challenge as opposition. And it's not always opposition. Sometimes it's just something to give you a kick in the seat of the pants enough that gets you running more toward your destiny instead of send you back. But He surrounded us with people that will help us make it home. People that will help us to get to where He's called us to be. Just like Ruth and Boaz. While we can expect delays and expect things to stop us and send us to the ground, at the same time, we can watch for God to work in the middle of the process. Because if you look through this chapter that we just read, God is not just in the destination, He's in the journey. He's not just at the end of the road waiting for you to get home. He's walking the path with you. He's working in your life every day. Every day that you live, He's working, shaping your life, shaping your character, doing a work of righteousness in you to draw you into His presence and to make you more like Him, so that when you get to the place that He's called you to be, you can do it. You can live there forever. But we have to allow that work to take place. Allow God to work in the process, in the journey that we're on. And I want to tell you this. Next week we're going to finish the book of Ruth in chapter 4. And we'll see what the kinsman redeemer did and what Boaz did next week. But I want to tell you that this, in the end of this chapter, that while we have a plan, you can always expect God to work in unexpected ways. You can expect Him to work. He's going to do it. He's going to do it. But don't expect him to do it the way you expect him to do it. Expect unexpected things from God. That he's going to do things in a different way. And when he does, I love the surprises. I'm much more grateful that I ended up with Judy instead of just a diploma. Judy will outlive the diploma. She already has. So I want to pray for you today. Would you bow your heads with me? Lord, I thank you for your grace. Thank you that in the middle of all the things that happen in our lives, you're at work, and you're at work for our good. Your word tells us that